Hey guys, welcome. Just wanted to let everyone know that everyone currently is on auto muted. So before you talk, just make sure to unmute yourself. And also, if you have any questions, please make sure to be courteous and use that raise your hand feature as well. Looking at the bottom of your screens. And then as well, as soon as you're done, with your question, just please remember to mute yourself as well.
All right, I'm showing a little after 1:30, so we can go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us for the CCOC budget training today. We are going to review the CCOC 22-23 Revenue Limited Budget, the forms associated with the operational budget submission package, as well as the jury and pandemic recovery plan funding sources. I'd like to briefly point out that some CCOC staff members are on the WebEx today. Our team includes John Dew, Jason Welty, Marlene Bruner, Rafael Ali Lozano, who you just heard, Leonard Carper, Johnny Petit, Nicole Taylor, Andrea Rice, Lila Eaton, and myself. And that's our whole team here. So if you ever need anything from us, please feel free to reach out anytime. And like Rafael said during this training, if you have a question anytime, please just let me know so we can address it as we go. And again, feel free to use the raise hand feature as well. Also at the top of your screen should be a zoom in feature if you need to make any of these documents that we're sharing a little larger. All right, so let's jump into a brief budget summary. This is one of the most frequently asked questions we get, so we thought it'd be applicable to just do another rundown. So as you all know, county fiscal year 22-23 began on October 1st. So this is a breakdown of each component of the clerk's available court-related revenue. So in July, the REC set the revenue estimate for the year at $441 million. They also set the cumulative excess estimate for the current year, of which the clerk's share is 1.6 million. And then in February, the budget committee set the amount of cumulative excess to reserve at 10%, which is the statutory minimum. So that's why that's a negative 160, because that comes out of the cumulative excess amount. Also in February, the committee voted to roll the actual additional cumulative excess from 2021 over the REC estimate into this 22-23 budget. And that was just over $1 million. And the final piece of this is the unspent budgeted funds from 2021 as determined by Settle Up, which is $9.8 million. So all of these amounts combined to set the clerk's total CCOC court-related revenue available at $453.2 million, which is a year-over-year increase of $8.4 million. So trending in the right direction. In addition to this amount, the clerks are also appropriated state general revenue dollars for jury reimbursement costs. And this year that includes two pieces. The first is the annual recurring amount of $11.7 million, as well as the carry forward balance from the previous year of $2.3 million, which gives us a jury amount of $14 million for this state fiscal year. And this is the second year that we are under the jury reimbursement model, which means that expenditures will be fully reimbursed up to the statewide total each year. If total costs exceed the available budget, we will proportionately reduce all 67 counties down to meet that available amount. And the CCOC will make sure we message that and the status of these funds as the year progresses. We also have $6.25 million of non-recurring general revenue for year 2 of the clerk's pandemic recovery plan. And the budget committee approved the same allocation by county as last year. And that leads, all of these pieces lead to the $473.4 million total available courtside budget. In August, the budget committee approved the clerk's needs-based budget of $501.4 million, which is $28 million above the actual budget amount here. Are there any questions on any of the pieces that go into our available budget? All right, seeing none. Wanted to give another brief overview of how the committee determined the revenue limited budget this year. So to build the clerk's 22-23 budget utilizing the funding we just outlined, the budget committee first established the base budget in April, which included two pieces. One is the $444.8 million 21-22 revenue limited budget, as well as $3.5 million for the calculated FRS statewide increase, which gave us an approved base budget of $448.3 million. So then in August, to establish the clerk's 22-23 revenue limited budget, the committee started with that approved base budget we just outlined, added $58,000 for the one new judge approved in Lake County, then dispersed the remaining $4.9 million via an across-the-board allocation, which gives us the approved $453.2 million revenue limited budget for the year. And again, on top of this amount, we have both the jury and PRP funding amounts, which are state dollars. So are there any questions on the rest of our budget before we jump in? All right. Seeing no questions, we will move on. So jumping to the operational budget submission. The operational budget this year consists of the same three forms as usual: the revenue projections form, the operational budget spreadsheet, and the clerk certification letter. These forms are available on the CCOC website and are due to the CCOC reports email by December 2nd. The main CCOC points of contact are myself, Rafael Ali Lozano, and Leonard Carper in our office. And as a reminder, if you make a change to your original operational budget form or revenue projections form, it would then be a version 2. Each time you submit a form to CCOC reports, that constitutes a new version. So please indicate that in the file name. All right, so the document that is currently shared is the revenue projections form. It should look very familiar. We fill this out twice a year. And for this form, this is the same form we've used in the recent past. Please identify actual revenues for the first 2 to 3 months, depending on when you submit the form, and then the projections for the rest of the fiscal year. And a common mistake we often see here is not adding a comment if you do not record DUIs. So if that is the case, that's fine. Down here, please just put, for example, Gulf County did not receive or did not record any DUIs, something like that. So again, this is pretty straightforward. It's our monthly projection forms. So are there any questions on this form? I don't see any hands. Okay. All right. Moving on to the operational budget spreadsheet. So this is the spreadsheet. It's essentially the same spreadsheet that we've had last year and previous years. It's the same 10 tabs. So we'll just go in order of each tab. So the first tab is Exhibit A, which is the front page. The purpose of this tab is to identify warnings for the entire operational budget spreadsheet. To begin filling out the spreadsheet, select the county name here in B6. And once you do that, a list of warnings will automatically populate for the other 9 tabs of the workbook. For each error, column A here identifies the exhibit for each warning, which correlates down here at the bottom. Column B describes the specific warning that is color-coded to match the warning level. Column C identifies whether the warning is an error, warning, or information only. And column D is for explanations, supporting information, staff notes as necessary. And please provide any justification as needed for each warning that pops up. Column E is a specialized filter. If you would like to view only rows with data visible, just uncheck the blanks and it only shows the rows where there's data. This feature is also available on all the other tabs, which is pretty helpful. So there are 4 types of warnings on this page. Level 1 is an error that is shaded red. This indicates a major issue with the budget form and the spreadsheet cannot be submitted with a red warning. So please address that issue prior to submitting this form. Level 2 is a moderate warning, which is shaded orange. So the form can be submitted with an orange warning. However, we may request additional clarification during the tech reviews. Level 3 is a mild warning and is shaded yellow. And again, the form can be submitted. However, CCOC may request additional clarification. And finally, level 4 is an information only warning and is shaded green. All right, so there are 3 personnel tabs in the spreadsheet. The first of which is the biggest and is Exhibit B. So the purpose of this exhibit is to provide personnel detail for each court-related position, regardless of funding source. On this tab, the detail for all court-related positions for the current fiscal year are entered. Each position listed on this exhibit must have some court-related duties or functions. If positions are 100% non-court, they should not be included here. Jury personnel and Title IV-D personnel should be included on this tab as a part of your gross budget. The portion of the costs that are reimbursed will be considered down here on Exhibit E, and we'll talk about that more when we get there. On this tab, however, IT personnel are not included since they are addressed on Exhibit E. We would recommend, if you are entering, as you enter data and numbers from another spreadsheet, to use the paste special values feature. That ensures that the data comes over cleanly. And if you do this, please just double check that the data pasted correctly, and then it pulls as you wanted it to. And we advise entering data manually when possible. We understand if you have hundreds of FT, that might not be possible, but that's our recommendation. So on this tab, row 5 is for the elected clerk, so it's pre-populated there. After that line, please enter data for each individual court-related position in your office, whether filled or vacant. Once a position number is entered here in column A, the cells required to be completed will be highlighted in peach, and once data is entered, it will turn back to green, showing that it's done. If you do not use position numbers in your office, you can just enter consecutive sequence numbers, 1, 2, 3, something like that. That way we can just, when we pull it into our database, we can differentiate between positions. So as you enter this data, starting in column A and moving right, please enter the job title, employment type, FRS type, if a position is vacant, and if so, the anticipated length of time that it will remain vacant, the pay type, pay rate, either hourly or annual, the hours worked in a week, the annualized total wages, FICA amount, FRS amount will be automatically calculated based on the updated approved rates. And then for health benefits in either columns M or N, right here, if you budget on an average amount for health benefits for all employees, please use the current general budgeted health column. And if you budget an actual amount, please use the current budgeted actual health column for that. And then enter life insurance, other benefits paid, payouts if necessary. And over here in column AK, all the way almost to the end, is where you can identify non-court percentages allocated for each position, which will automatically adjust the court workload allocation percentage in AJ. All right, so please ensure that the allocation is as accurate as possible, since the spreadsheet will calculate the court-related costs for each position from the allocation percentage. At the bottom of this tab, you can scroll down. So down at the very bottom, and again, in column AV, if you select or unselect the blanks, it will get rid of all of the empty lines, so you don't have to scroll down all the way to line 1,300. At the bottom of this tab, you can enter any lump sum amounts for overtime, workers' comp, unemployment, and OPED. If you do so, please provide an explanation in the additional info text box for any of these amounts entered. So some common mistakes that we have found in previous tech reviews are pay rates entered incorrectly. Please ensure that the pay rates, whether annual or hourly, make sense when the total wage is calculated. For example, a position making $15 an hour that works 10 hours a week should reflect an annual total wage of $7,800, not $31,200, since they only work part-time. Another common mistake we found is for all benefits, amounts should be entered for the total amount for the position, even if it's less than 100% court-related. So if a position is 50% court, 50% non-court, going through these tabs, please still reflect 100% of that position's pay and benefits, and the court percentage will be calculated based on the court non-court breakdown in AJ and AK. Another issue that we have found is if a position is vacant, please remember to enter the length of vacancy. We understand that's likely a projection, but that will just help our final numbers. And please also ensure that the other benefits are explained at the bottom of this tab. Please do not combine positions for any reason unless there will be an overlap throughout the year. And also, please do not list an individual's name in this document. And then the total court FTE is calculated here in B1311 and is carried forward to Exhibit B1, and the total in 1326 is carried forward to Exhibit B2. All right, so the second FTE tab is Exhibit B1. The purpose of this exhibit is to distribute the gross court-related FTE from Exhibit B on that last tab across court divisions using the Universal Accounting System codes, or UAS codes. The distribution of FTE across departments should be based on the best available approximation of actual work performed. For each department, indicate the number of FTE performing activities in that court-related UAS code. Some pre-established departments have been entered here in column A at the top. Enter names of any cost centers needed in column A from rows 15 through 80 that are not already included up here in lines 9, 10, and 11. So if you do add cost centers, they should explain how your office is organized. So for example, in-house collections department, a call center, inspector general, etc. You should not enter cost centers that do not have FTE or expenditures associated with them. So line 12 on this tab right here is automatically populated with the remaining gross court FTE from Exhibit B. It pulls over across the various court divisions based on default allocation percentages. You can change the percentages to meet the need of your county. And when you do so and manually allocate FTE in the various cost centers, that adjusts line 12 accordingly. And line 12 should equal 0 when cost centers are fully utilized. Court type totals in cell AA81, which are all the way at the bottom here, will match the total court from Exhibit B. So the FTE should match both there and the bottom of tab E that we just went over. Shared and non-court allocations are collected in columns V, W, and X. The personnel costs on Exhibit B2, operating costs on Exhibit C1, and capital costs on D1 will be allocated to various court divisions based on assignment of FTE on this exhibit. Changes to this exhibit will adjust future exhibits as it feeds the data forward. IT-related UAS codes are not included on this exhibit since IT costs to be funded from CCOC trust fund dollars will be addressed again on Exhibit E. You can refer to Appendix B in the instructions for definitions of UAS codes as needed. Jury management FTE should be included on this exhibit as part of your gross budgeted FTE. Enter jury FTE that are reimbursed here on line 13 as one of the pre-populated cost centers. And a common mistake we've identified in our tech reviews in the past relates to Title 40 expenses, which should be added even if they're small amounts. If you have no Title 40 expenses, please just explain why that's the case. All right, the next tab is Exhibit B2. So the purpose of this exhibit is to distribute all gross personnel salaries and benefits costs among court division by department. Here in column A, each department listed on Exhibit B1 is automatically brought over and populated. The total personnel costs must equal the total budgeted expenditures. On the personnel costs breakout in columns D through S, the total amount of the personnel cost is broken out by court division. Cell B12 will automatically adjust when the amounts are distributed across the cost centers. So right here. The expenditure amounts in cell B12, like we just said, will be automatically distributed. If this number is negative, you have over allocated costs and need to correct the information entered on Exhibit B or adjust the allocations on this tab. There's two ways to achieve that. If a department has no court-related FTE designated on B1, any budgeted personnel cost for the department will be distributed across all court types except for jury. Again, line 12 should equal 0 when the cost centers are fully utilized. Any amounts unallocated to a cost center or court division will allocate across the court divisions based on the FTE allocation. Amounts cannot be manually adjusted as they pull from what was entered and calculated on Exhibit B and then allocated on B1. Jury personnel costs should be included on this tab as well. All those personnel costs that plan to be reimbursed can be again entered on line 13, the jury management line. Are there any questions so far on any of the first 4 tabs? All right, seeing none. Moving on to Exhibit C. So there are 2 operating cost tabs, the first of which is Exhibit C. And the purpose of this exhibit is to provide detail regarding gross court-related operating costs by UAS code. So UAS codes are listed here in column A. Object codes are listed in columns B and C, and gross court-related operating costs are entered here in column D. And then the costs are totaled in D30. Jury costs that will either be fully or partially reimbursed should be included in lines D32 through 35 down here. And then they are totaled on 36, and both of those amounts are sum totaled in D37 for the operating total. Any additional information or explanation can be entered in C40 down here as needed. If dollar amounts are entered in an other category above, a red text warning will appear off to the side requesting info about the amount be entered into the text box below. Leaving this additional info box blank is a common mistake that we have found in the recent past, so please just put any applicable information needed at the bottom. All right, the next tab is Exhibit C1. And this exhibit, the purpose of which is to distribute all Article 5 budgeted operating costs across court divisions. This tab is very similar to Exhibit B2 that we just went over. In column A, each department from Exhibit B1 is brought over and automatically populated again. The expenditure amounts will be automatically distributed among the court divisions in columns D through S based on the FTE allocations established on Exhibit B1. These cells are yellow, meaning that while data is pre-populated, it can be manually adjusted to fit your office. Again, cell B12 here will automatically adjust when amounts are distributed across the cost centers and will equal 0 when fully balanced. Jury costs should be included on this exhibit as well on lines 13. And if an amount is entered in column B, which does not coincide to a department already defined on Exhibit B1, operating costs will be allocated across all court divisions except for jury. And as a reminder, if you want to clear out the blank rows over here in column T, just uncheck the drop-down box and just uncheck the blanks, and that only shows rows where there is data entered. All right, moving on to Exhibit D, there are 2 capital cost tabs if needed. The first of which is this Exhibit D, which provides detail regarding court-related capital costs. This is a straightforward tab, enter projected capital expenditures in column D, and provide explanation as needed in cell C20 down at the bottom. Exhibit D1 distributes the capital costs among court division. Again, this is very similar in function, similarly to the previous tabs that we discussed. Allocate any capital costs by department and ensure that cell B12 reflects 0 when fully balanced and allocated. Before we jump into the last 2 tabs, are there any questions? All right, seeing no hands. Exhibit E is the net budget amount tab, and this is a summary tab. So column A of the first section titled FTEs provides a breakout of FTE by court division as reported on Exhibit B1. To make corrections to this section, changes must be made on Exhibits B or B1, and the total gross FTE is calculated there on line 15. The other funding allocation section requires that you list any of the previously reported positions that are funded by other non-CCOC funding sources, which include county, jury reimbursement, Title 4D, et cetera. IT-related FTE are reported on line 24 and should identify IT positions to be funded from CCOC dollars, and the total net FTE is calculated on line 25. So actual percentage allocations are on line 26 and the target allocations on line 27. Any amounts that are higher or lower than 5% of the target allocation will appear in yellow text, which will create a warning on the first tab. This is a tool to compare where your data is to the benchmark allocation set. There may be a valid reason why this is not applicable to your county. Having figures outside the target allocation will not prevent your budget from being submitted, but it will create a warning on the first tab. So the court-related expenses section provides a breakout of court-related expenses by court division as reported on Exhibits B through D1. To make corrections to this section, changes must be made on those previous exhibits. Gross expenditures are totaled on line 34. The other expenditures resource allocation section provides a breakout of expenditures funded from non-CCOC sources and is distributed across court divisions. All other expenditure amounts are totaled on line 40. And net expenditures are totaled on line 42. Additional IT expenditures to be funded from the CCOC Trust Fund are entered on line 44, which gives us the total net expenditures, which are totaled on line 46. Again, percent allocations are on line 47 with target allocations on line 48. Any amounts higher or lower than that 5% target will appear in yellow with a warning on the first tab. Please just verify that these figures are correct. And again, that target allocation is just a tool to compare the benchmark allocations. There may be a valid reason why it's not applicable to your office. Having figures outside of that amount will again not prevent your budget from being submitted. They're just the benchmark is just percentages, which are a guideline, not a requirement. So at the bottom of this tab, the projected jury reimbursement costs are totaled in B51. The CCOC budget authority is totaled in B54, and the amount over under the CCOC budget authority is calculated in D54 next to it, which gives us an aggregate total projected expenditures, which are reflected at the very bottom in B57. All right, and the final tab is Exhibit G. The purpose of this exhibit is to provide explanation as needed. Section 1A at the top calculates the differences between the 22-23 operational budget and last year's approved CCOC revenue limited budget amounts, as well as the FTE. These calculations are automated. The differences are calculated in D8 for budget and H8 for FTE. Below that in Section 1B, please provide the differences identified in Section 1 as either increases or decreases in columns C through K. Down here, the totals by service area are reflected on line 21. The FTE in L15, that is the total out here, should match H8 above, and the expenditures total in L21 should match D8 above. Please provide explanations in Section 5 at the bottom of this tab as needed down here. Section 2 has been hidden as it is no longer required for the operational budget submission. Section 3 identifies the gross and net amounts for FRS and health insurance costs for the 3 most recent years. Provide explanations in Section 5 as needed again. In Section 4, please identify any estimated OPEB costs OPEB amounts in column D are automated from Exhibit B. So right here in section 4 are the OPEB calculations. The CCOC funded amount in column F is automatically calculated and will adjust as non-CCOC amounts are entered in column G. Provide explanation in column H here to the side as needed. In section 5, please provide any additional information related to your operational budget submission as necessary. So down here, anything that you feel that we should know or is an outlier or needs justification from above, please include that there in section 5. And as always, if you have any questions on your submission, please reach out to CCOC staff or refer to the instructions documents that are available on our CCOC website. Are there any questions on the operational budget spreadsheet and tabs? All right, seeing none. I also wanted to briefly address both the jury funding as well as the Pandemic Recovery Plan Year 2 funding. So Raphael, the floor is yours to go over those two items.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right. You're going to put it up there? All right. Awesome. Awesome. Hi, everybody. We wanted to just briefly touch on jury management reimbursement forms as well. So please save your questions for the end. The jury costs are now handled via a reimbursement model on the state fiscal year. The previous two jury forms were combined to one quarterly form that we now use. This spreadsheet collects the actual jury costs for previous quarters. We made a few tweaks from last year's forms to include the jury budget authority section on the top of the form. That was removed since funding switched to a reimbursement model and the budget authority was no longer necessary. Therefore, the remaining budget authority calculation line was also removed. The jury fund available as of June 30th section was removed as well. Since this process was completed and cleaned up last year, this certification of existing funds at hand was needed to be cleaned up from the previous estimated actuals models that we were working with for the previous years. This is no longer needed since counties should be entirely caught up with their jury reimbursement dollars and have no additional jury-related dollars on hand. Clarification was added also for the JAC disbursement line, now titled Jury Reimbursement Actuals Received from the JAC. There was some confusion regarding which quarters the disbursement funds were to be identified in the current year. Even though funds were technically received in the following quarter, they should be reflected on the form for the quarter that the cost was actually incurred. For example, let's say if you had 10,000 expenditures to reflect and sell G40, when you submit the quarter 2 submission, you'll go back and enter what the JAC actually dispersed to you in quarter 1 and sell G41 at that time. So just a quick little side note. Also, just please, if you have any amounts added in the other sections, to just please add comments on lines 45. That's something that we just kept on seeing. But yeah, we would greatly appreciate that. Also, if they have any expenditures that you forget to add in the current quarter in the submission deadline, and you also missed the submission deadline, you may add that in the following quarter. Please just make sure to add a detailed note explaining what occurred. So for state fiscal year 22-23, clerks were appropriated a recurring $11.7 million, as well as the $2.2 million of unexpended funds from last year that will be carried forward to use this year. This provides just under $14 million in jury reimbursement costs this year. We recently collected the actuals for quarter 1, which totaled just under $4 million. This is the highest quarter we've ever had, actually. If this trend continues, we will likely run out of funds in Q4. The jury policy dictates that if the available release reimbursement funding in a given quarter is less than the actual cost statewide, the CCC will apply the reduction to each county proportionally. If this happens, you will have to cover any coverage from your CCOC budget, as we have done in previous years. But yeah, we will continue to message this as the year progresses. Are there any questions on jury funding? Awesome. I see no hands. All right, moving on to pandemic recovery plan. So the legislature provided 6.25 million in non-recurring generated revenue for year 2 of the clerk's pandemic recovery plan to continue to address the backlog of cases. The budget committee distributed these funds via the same allocation as the county, by county, as last year. So the process is exactly the same as as the previous year. The expenditures tracking spreadsheet is also exactly the same as last year. So it's very straightforward. Please just please ensure that exactly 50% of the PRP funds though are expended by December 1st as well. Are there any questions on pandemic recovery? Griffin, do you have anything you would like to add regarding PRP or jury?
No, I think you covered everything. Does anyone have any questions on jury, PRP, operational budget in general? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time to join us for today's budget training. We plan to post a recording of this training on the CCOC website next week for reference. And as always, please reach out to us if you need anything, have any questions, anything like that. So if there are no further questions, thank you again.